Welcome to the Write Your Own Story podcast. I'm your host, Betsy Leonidas, and the founder of the Write Your Own Story company. Girl, I can tell you right now, you are definitely enough. Here we value service, sisterhood, connection, laughter, and that super genuine, keep it real, tell you like it is honesty. My hope is at the end of each episode, you realize you can do whatever it is you dream about and that you are not alone with what you struggle with. I'm hoping that you are snapping and clapping and hell yes in your way through each one of these episodes. So if this tracks with you, let's get started. I'm so glad you're here. All right, everyone. Welcome back to the latest episode of the Write Your Own Story podcast. I'm your host, Betsy Leonidas, and I am so thrilled to be here with Michelle Dempsey-Multack, who is the founder of Moms Moving On, which is everything from courses to podcasts to a book and an absolute amazing presence on social. I am such a mega fan, so I am just like beyond thrilled that you are here. So Michelle, thank you so much for being here.
Absolutely. I'm happy to be here.
So Michelle is a divorce coach, among many other facets and amazing things. But one of the reasons that I asked you to be on the show is you are very, very, very kids first, kid centric in terms of your divorce coaching. And I love the content that you share for a bazillion reasons. But when it comes to putting the kids first and at the center, you know, I think that resonates obviously so much for people who are going through the absolutely terrifying process of divorce, but also even for those who aren't divorced. We're all trying to raise resilient kids. And one of my very favorite ways that you put it was raising kids with a childhood they don't have to recover from.
Right.
So I just, you know, I like to start off every show with an intention. And really, I think we're going to ground this conversation in all that it means to raise resilient children. So I'm really excited to share this perspective with everyone. So the way that I know Michelle is I found your social or your book first. I can't remember when I was going through my divorce. And, you know, I can't even begin to explain. I know this is no news to you because I'm sure all the people that you work with feel this way in some way, shape, or form. But like, I feel like my life died and I felt like a huge piece of me died with it. And I did not know how to put one foot in front of the other, but I had to. I have 4 small children at home. And I needed to make sure that they were going to be okay. And I knew that I could be okay if I knew they were going to be okay. And your book, I ripped through every single page and like I am a power, you know, like I'm all about being a strong, bold, brave, ambitious woman. But that one really, like my divorce really took my feet right out from under me. And it was for the first time I felt like I could stand back up. So thank you.
I'm so happy to hear that.
I
You know,
mean
in writing it, I think the benefit of me writing that book was like, I wrote it just a few years after my own divorce. And I had just gotten certified as a co-parenting and divorce expert. And I'm a teacher by trade. And so caring about kids is first and foremost for me. It always has been.
Yeah.
But coupling that with what I knew the difficulties of divorce were and were going to be down the road, I think that's what left the biggest impact for people with the book. And I was actually talking to my agent this morning, my literary agent. She's like, I'm just so proud of how well it's done. And I'm like, you know, and I look back to when I wrote it, which was 4 years ago now. And I'm like, I have so much more that I wish I could have put in there, because each year of your divorce, of your co-parenting journey is going to teach you so much and you're going to grow so much.
I'm ready for book number 2 when you are. So I'm just saying, it's like one of those series that you just have to read the next one. Cause it's so true. I mean, it's like raising kids, right? God, I was laughing today. I've been a parent for 13 years. My youngest are going to be 9 in January. My kids are like pretty self-sufficient and I still eat standing up. Like, why? I'm not like I'm not trying to save little toddlers from, you know, trying to kill themselves inadvertently anymore, but this is just what we do. But like my point being is that as a parent, everything changes from stage to stage. And I can, even just being 3 years into my divorce, I can see it now. It's just different. So I'm ready for book number 2, number 3, number 4. So, okay. Not that you're busy or anything.
Time for you.
Right. Not that you're busy. But truly, and yeah, you know, your social, I'm sure you see it on your metrics on your half, but I'm just constant like, boom, boom, share, save. Cause I'm like, yes, that is it. That's the ticket. So I can't even.
That's really nice to hear. You know, I think people would assume like I have so many followers, it doesn't matter to me what people think, but there is so much bad divorce content out there, especially as it pertains to co-parenting with someone after divorce, and it makes me cringe all day, every day, that I can hardly look at this point. And so knowing that I'm reaching people in a way that is effective and also helps them feel good makes me feel really proud.
Good. I'm so glad to hear you say that. Yes, it absolutely hits in all the ways. It's approachable, it's so honest, and it's actionable, which I think is like a really hard balance to hit in sort of the realm of social and quick hits and whatnot. But you do an amazing job.
Right. Thank you.
You're welcome. So, would you mind just giving us a quick rundown now that I'm done fangirling? Can you give us a quick rundown of just sort of who you are and how you got here?
Yeah, sure. I am Michelle Dempsey-Multack. I went from Dempsey to Multack after divorce and remarriage, but still very much stay grounded in the fact that I am like Bella's mom first. Bella is the life that I created with my now ex-husband, her dad. I'm a child of divorce, and I think that's where my story really started. So many horrible things that I experienced in my childhood absolutely led me to the relationship that I was in that led me to divorce. And I think that that was important. Not that anybody wants to get divorced, but had I not gotten divorced, I don't think I would have done the healing I needed to do to really understand how my childhood affected me and how much I didn't want my childhood to affect my own parenting, and how much I wanted to give my daughter a co-parenting story that was very different than my own was. And so, in hindsight, everything kind of makes sense. But we got divorced, separated when she was 2, and we just were so not right for each other. It was like one of those cliche, like love just isn't enough type of
Yeah.
things. We were night and day, and life is hard enough. And then when you're like two polar opposites, it just, and I had a lot of growing and healing to do. I definitely was not in the emotional space to be married. Like I still had
Mm.
trust issues to work through. I had so much. And so that relationship really highlighted all of that for me. So when we separated, Bella was 2, and I kind of was like, psh, I've been through worse. Like, I can
Yeah.
handle this. And then I
Yeah.
realized very quickly that getting divorced and co parenting doesn't just mean living in 2 homes. Like, there was so much more that came along with it. So at that point, I had stopped teaching when right before I got separated. And I was writing a lot for a bunch of different publications about motherhood and like,
Yeah.
marriage. And that then I was like, listen, I can't write about marriage. I'm getting divorced. And they were
Yeah.
very open to me shifting the nature of my content towards what it's like to be the first of your friends to get divorced and have a 2-year-old and feel ostracized at carpool
Yes.
and not have anything to do on Saturday nights anymore. And, not also wanting to throw yourself into a new relationship yet because you're not sure, is someone going to want me? Like, there were so many things. And so I started
Yes.
writing about it and posting about it. And at the time, there wasn't really much of that kind of content anywhere. So it definitely, caught people's attention. And before I knew it, I became like the divorce girl on social
Yeah.
media. Then I started getting really hard hitting questions that I didn't always know how to answer. And it's in my nature to help people. So that's why I started the podcast. I wanted to be able to speak to the problems people were having with informed professionals, so I didn't sound like an idiot. And that was in the beginning of 2020. Who knew that there was a pandemic around the corner? So that helped the podcast just sort of like catapult itself into its own. We've been like a top 1% globally, which has been amazing. We've had amazing guests, both informative and pop culture, and it's been really educational. So then with that came questions about, where can I read your book? I didn't have a book.
Yeah.
I'm like, yeah, I need to be writing a book. I was a journalism major. Writing has always been my passion.
Yeah.
So I set out to get myself a book deal, and it turns out it's way harder than you would think.
Oh my God.
I got rejected from my dream literary agent. You can't get
Ugh.
a deal without an agent, and so then I had to go and like start from scratch. And then she eventually took me on, and we got the deal with Simon and Schuster in late 2020, and then Mom's Moving On, the book, came out in 2022. So within that, I coach one-on-one, and now I've developed a program called the Moving On Method, where we train and certify divorce coaches. We've been trademarked for about a year now, and that has taken off beautifully because there really is a need for people helping other people through the divorce process,
Yes.
not in a legal way and not in a mental health way, but in an informed, educated way that's going to allow the client to separate their emotions from what their children really need. So I've been doing all of that. And
Just a
here
little
we
something,
are.
something here and there. Yeah.
Yeah,
I,
yeah, here we are.
it's amazing. And I think what really sticks out to me as someone who's been through divorce and sort of relative to what you have created is like this notion of community. Like you were
Hmm.
saying, it feels so ostracizing no matter how much you are loved by your friends. Your life is just wildly different now. Like you said,
Yeah,
you're not going to the couples dinner parties anymore. You're not,
no.
like people sometimes get nervous to ask you for if your kid can go on a play date because they don't want to make you uncomfortable by having to say, I actually don't have them this weekend.
Hmm.
Or
Hmm.
they just literally know nothing about divorce. So they don't want to say the wrong thing. So then they don't ask you about it. Or I don't know.
Right. And it gets hard because like, you're so in your own emotions in the beginning. Like now I could easily say like you have to hold space for the fact that they just don't understand. But in the
Yeah.
moment you're like, what the hell? Like you feel
Mm-hmm.
like everyone's turned on you. And if you think
Mm-hmm.
about it, like you don't know what to say to the divorcing person. And now
Yeah.
you're this person's best friend. So you know all the dark shit that you've heard about her ex, and like so now you
Yep.
don't know, like, do you make a play date with him or like what? It's
Yep.
very very hard on both ends, I think. And I wrote so much about that in the book, as you know, because it was like one of the first moments of my separation that felt almost as hard as the separation itself, was
Yes.
recognizing that my friendships were changing, and that felt really like abandoning in a sense.
Oh, absolutely. And then to think of what is that impact going to have on my children and their friendships? And, like their friends
Yeah,
at school could care less, but is it?
yeah. It's when you say that, it brings up for me one of my closest friends who I met when Bella was just starting preschool. She was a year and a half, and we're still close friends to this day. So she's kind of been with me on this journey. She'll always
Yeah.
talk about how like I didn't miss a beat. Like I was still making play dates for Bella all the time. I was still, she had all the extracurriculars. I was involved in every event. Like I made sure to do that for her because I never wanted the divorce to affect her or her friendships or her little social life in any way.
Absolutely. It's like, and to me, that was until I could find my own strength to heal myself. To me, that was my lifeline, was taking care of my kids. I
Hmm.
was like, this
Hmm.
is why I'm getting out of bed today. This is why, like you said, like I even sent out a text message to like, a handful of people that were maybe not necessarily like my closest friends, but were the parents of my kids' friends. And I was like, listen, our family is going through this. This is really challenging. My kids need their friends more than ever. And it was unbelievable to see how many people, everyone wrote back and was like, we're here, whatever you need.
I love that you did that. I got to be honest, because I am not the person who would do that comfortably. I'm not good at asking for help. And my friends will always say that I give off the appearance like I've got it covered. And so I
Mm-hmm.
think it's really brave when someone can admit that they don't and they need more support, because had I done that, I probably wouldn't have had so much resentment for the people I felt like were abandoning me, which they weren't abandoning me. They just didn't know how to show up for me.
Yeah, and I am horrible at asking for help too, but my best friend, 6 months before my marriage fell apart, her husband passed.
Oh,
And
wow.
I know. So, and she also has 4 kids. And so we're just hanging out together. But,
Yeah.
and we thank God we have each other. But, she is amazing at asking for help. And I just remember even before then, I knew I was going to be in a life moment where I was going to need to ask for help. I was just watch her in such admiration. I'm like, this is how you do it. Like, again,
Yeah.
from my own past and childhood, I'm like, nope, I'll do everything myself. I got it. No
Yeah.
problem.
Yeah.
Like, I'm screwed if I ask for help, quite honestly. And so to watch her, even before I knew this was it, who knew it was going to be foreshadowing, but I was like, okay, so that's how you do it. And to see community like pour into her, I was like, okay, that's a thing. We're doing that. Okay.
Hmm.
Yes. I'm
Hmm.
so she just also sets an amazing example.
Well, you're
But
lucky to
yes,
have her.
very, very, very. But yes, for everyone listening, ask for help. No matter
Yeah.
what it is, ask for the help.
There's literally like I always say there's no awards given
Yeah.
how much you suffer or struggle like quietly. Like it affects everything in your life, and knowing when to ask for help I think is a big sign of emotional maturity.
Yeah, getting there. Yeah, for sure. I love that. So, one of the things that really sticks out about your story, and one of the common through lines with this podcast is, I call it write your own story because I felt like before I got divorced, I was like, I was doing everything I like, quote unquote, should have been doing. Like, no one worked harder than me. I tried to be the absolute perfect wife. I had a lot of healing to do too. Don't get me wrong. I was not the perfect wife, but sure as hell tried. I thought I was doing everything right in terms of, friendships and people pleasing and kids and whatever. And my life still fell apart. So when I finally came up for air, I was like, fuck it. I'm writing my own rules and I'm writing the story myself. And
Mm-hmm.
like, but thank God the universe sent me this pivot. My life is on this amazing trajectory that I never would have had if it hadn't pivot. And I think about that for you. You would never be doing what you're doing, having the platform and helping as many women. Can you talk to me a little bit about like what that pivot means to you?
Yeah, I mean, look, I think you have two options after any setback in life, right? Whether it's divorce or in your friend's case,
Mm-hmm.
an unexpected death. Like you can sit in pity for yourself. You could be the victim,
Mm-hmm.
or you can be the victor and say, okay, this happened to me. I was a victim of a bad situation, but how can I grow from this? And I do really believe it's our job, especially as women, as nurturers. If you've been through something and you've made it through and you've found the beauty in the other side, like it's your job to reach a hand out and give that to somebody else. And maybe not as your profession, but
Yes.
just, like as a person to person, right? Like
Yes.
I'm sure if you had somebody else in your community who had an unexpected death of a spouse, you'd say, hey, speak to my best friend. There's nobody
Absolutely.
better to talk to, right? And so then like she'd be helping in that way. And I feel like that's been it's such a it's so true to who I am. My friends from my childhood will tell you like I've always been like the mom. I've always been the caretaker of my friends. I've always been the
Yeah.
one who like got shit done. Like you
Mm-hmm.
come to me for advice. Like, and I very much I think that's one of my best qualities that I can hold that space for people. And so to be able to have taken my own lemons and made them into something great, like it sets a great example for myself. I hold myself to higher standards than I would have before my divorce. I'm really intent on providing accurate and research backed information. Like I don't throw myself on social media just for likes. I do it for, informing people in a healthy way because there's so much misinformation out there. And I don't know. I think a pivot is all about perspective, right? Like,
Yeah.
oh, poor me, I got divorced, or oh, look at all the things I can do despite my divorce.
Yes. And like, God, life is literally endless possibility. Like when you're ready, like just get up and embrace it because look at all the amazing things that you have done because of this pivot. I kind of get obsessed with pivots. Like I love when the universe closes a door. I mean, don't get me wrong, it hurts.
I always say I'm addicted to new beginnings. I
Yeah.
think we only have so much time in this
Mm-hmm.
life to like do new, exciting, great things. And I've had so many unfortunate experiences in my life where I have had to rebuild and come back up from rock bottom. And like I've always done it. And
Mm-hmm.
I inspire myself so much each time.
I, oh, I'm going to think about that. I'm like, cause again, same. I'm like, how many times I'm like, are we doing this again? Okay, sure. But I love that to like really stand in your power and be like, yeah, I inspire myself. And that you inspire. I love that your daughter is watching you stand in your power and be like, watch me hold my coffee. Yeah.
Yeah, literally my coffee, because I can't do it
Yes.
without that.
I know, literally. Hey, busy moms and aspiring entrepreneurs. If you've got a business dream on your heart, but only 20 hours a week or less to make it happen, I'm here for you. I'm Betsy, a busy mom of 4 and a business coach obsessed with helping women just like you build thriving businesses that fit your life, not the other way around. After 20 years in marketing and building my own nonprofit and e-commerce business and a successful podcast, I know exactly what it takes to go from overwhelmed to empowered. That's why I've created my self-paced digital courses designed to help you move forward with clarity and confidence. Whether you're starting from scratch or recalibrating an existing business, my courses will take you from stuck and overwhelmed to simplified, organized, and confident in your next steps. And most importantly, confident in yourself. With titles like Building a Business Around Balance and Joy, Slay Imposter Syndrome and Show Up, Marketing Made Easy, Empowering Success with Grow Math Financial Planning, and Overcoming Overwhelm and Keep Going, you'll get simple, sharp, tested strategies that work. Each course is just $79, or save $100 and grab all 5 for $295. Every course is a video with slides by me, plus free worksheets to guide you through. Learn on your own time, at your own pace, and in the privacy of your own home. Let's make your business dream a reality, even if you only have a few hours a week. Visit writeyourownstory.co/FFA-courses or click the link in the show notes below. Ladies, it's time to step into your power, make your money, and build the life you've been dreaming of. And I can't wait to help you get there. Again, visit writeyourownstory.co/FFA-courses or click the link in the show notes below. Okay, so speaking of your daughter and how she is your inspiration, and like that you're so dedicated to her having a different experience than you have, talk to me about how you're defining resiliency for children, especially relative to divorce. Because if I think of how our parents would have defined resiliency, it would have been like, I'm going to turn you out to the wild and you're going to survive.
Right.
Like,
which for all intents and purposes,
yeah.
I am resilient in the face of extreme adversity with very little emotional support and no therapy. And all of, my parents did everything wrong in the divorce process. And one, because he was just not a good person. And my mom, because she just didn't know like what you're supposed to do and not do, and what I think saved me, despite the horror of it all. My parents' divorce lasted for the entirety of my adolescence, from 8 to 18.
Oh my
in
gosh.
and out of court. I ended up estranged from my father before I was a teenager. Like it was
I'm so
the most brutal and the most ugly. But I had one constant, and that was my mom and my grandparents. And like, despite all of it, like I was still being raised to do well in school and follow rules and be home at, there were still expectations laid out in front of me. So I got like the bare minimum, but the important bare minimum.
Yeah.
And that in itself is what I'm constantly reminding parents of. Like research shows, Harvard research, if you have one stable caregiver, it is a caregiver, doesn't even have to be a biological parent, one stable adult who expects the same consistency that they give and holds a child accountable, that is enough for a child to thrive. And so within that, right? So like, okay, it's one thing to be resilient, but you can be resilient and also have so much shit to heal. So how do we raise the resilient child who doesn't have to heal from their co-parented childhood? Well, okay, this is where most people get it wrong. They think kids are resilient, they'll be fine.
Yeah.
Really? Look at us. We're all in therapy and we all have anxiety, right?
Yep.
So no, the answer is not that kids can handle anything and grow through everything. It's that they need certain support to get through the hard things so that they're not getting to adulthood and realizing, oh, all of my emotional needs were neglected. I don't know how to be in an adult relationship now. And also not poison them with the burdens of the divorce, because the second you do that, you rob a child of their childhood. And when they get to adulthood, you're going to be begging them to still want to have a relationship with you. So these are the two foundations in which I parent and in which I help other people parent their kids, despite the complexities of divorce and co-parenting.
I'm obsessed. Okay. So I think one of the, when I was reading through more of your material, and it was around really dispelling the myths of like what it is for children to go through divorce. I think the myths to me, just off the top of my head, range from everything from like, you've ruined your child's life to kids are resilient and they'll be just fine. Just like, focus on rebuilding your life and, finding someone for you and et cetera. So you said like, there are really two sort of core components to like how you teach people to do this. Can we get into a little bit more of the depth there? So like, I love the notion of like, yes, there's the bare minimum. Like I see some parents, and like, even I sometimes am like, oh my God, I just want you to be happy. Like I'll just bend on X, Y, and Z. But like those foundations to the expectations that you have for your children seem to still be really critical. Is it critical also like in terms of, expectations on grades and how you show up for your family and how you contribute?
Yeah.
How
So
do you
that's
do that?
I was just in a session with a client before I joined you today, where we had this exact conversation. She was feeling really bad because she's going through a very messy divorce. Dad is not very consistent,
Mm-hmm.
canceling on his weekends all the time. It's
Yeah.
affecting her children. Her
Yeah.
daughter, who is a preteen, is starting to struggle in school. And she said, Michelle, I just feel so shitty because like she comes home from school with a bad grade and I sit and I make her study and I make her review and I feel like I'm putting so much pressure on her. I said, hold up.
Mm-hmm.
Because when we talk about the Children's Bill of Rights and divorce, which
Mm.
most mental health professionals will give to the parents when they are divorcing, so that they know that there really is a standard in which you should conduct yourself and what your children deserve in this divorce. And the number one thing on that list is your child deserves the right to be a kid and a life that's as close to what it would have been had you stayed married. So,
Mm.
had you stayed married, I asked her, would you say, oh, God, you have bad grades, that's okay, let's just brush it under the rug? No, you would sit down, you would
Mm-hmm.
force your child to study more. Like, it can be a both and. Divorce can be both hard on your child and they still have to do the things and follow the rules that other kids follow. Like, and that's not ignoring their needs, but it's also holding them accountable for the things that other kids are being held accountable for. Like, you don't want to get to adulthood and have no like life skills because your parents felt bad for you. I see
Right.
guilt harming children so much more in the
Mm.
divorce than actual parenting. Parenting from guilt will have you throwing rules out the window and letting your kids do whatever they want because you just feel so bad that you got divorced. Like, that doesn't teach them anything.
No.
And so, I think there's a big fear, especially for women, if dad ends up with more money
Mm-hmm.
and less time with the kids, he's just going to, they'll say, oh, of course, they're going to have so much fun with him. And then I'm the one who has to instill all the rules. Yeah. Well, guess what makes children feel safe and,
Yeah.
and connected? It's rules and expectations and boundaries. So those are very important no matter your divorce guilt. But I think also it comes down to what children need in terms of not having to heal from their co-parented experience is the opportunity to open up about their feelings to their parents and also have a parent support their relationship with their other parent despite their pain. So
Yes.
it can be a both and in all senses of the word. This person could have both broken your heart and still be a really great parent, maybe not in the way you define great parent, but in the fact that they're consistent and they show up and they want to be present in this child's life. So that's like the foundation for what we do. Like, I'll meet with a client and they're like, and then he did this and he said that
Mm.
and he's the worst. And can you believe now he's trying to pretend to be like this great dad? And I'm like, well, what if he's not pretending? Tell me the parts of him that you fell in love with. Tell
Yeah.
me the ways in which you respect him as a parent. And
Right.
it's like finding that so that when your child comes home from the other parent's house and says, I really miss dad, you don't take it as an attack. You take it as
Yeah.
an indication that there's some good stuff happening in that relationship too. So I
Yeah.
think the biggest thing a parent can do for their child is learn to separate their own emotions in the divorce from parenting with this person after the divorce.
I I thought of 7,000 questions while you were mentioning all of that because I feel like there's so much, it's so multifaceted. So, like, when from the notion of guilt or like, even I like to think about sometimes for to like reframe in my mind, there's also families that are still in their nuclear family where maybe mom is on the road all the time for work and there's guilt there and she's parenting
Mhm.
from guilt. Or
There's
maybe
not a mother in this world that doesn't have some sort of guilt. Like, I feel guilty
seriously,
when I'm 5 minutes late for carpool because that's just the kind of mom I am, right? Like,
same. Yep.
women are designed to feel guilty because we're expected to do it all and then criticize when we don't do it all perfectly. So like, I think that's just, guilt is just a story you tell yourself. And if you feel guilty for your divorce, you're implying that you've done something bad by taking the initiative to free yourself from something harmful.
Yes.
And I just don't buy that story. I don't let anybody die on the hill of like guilt like that. It just makes no sense.
No, it is a beautiful example for how you can restart your life. And that is like such a, that is how life goes. Everyone has to restart in some way, shape, or form. You lose a job, a relationship ends, etc. Like these resiliency skills that you can then model to your children and make that state, that safe, stable, loving environment that you're talking about. That is what every child deserves.
Right. And
Okay.
every child also deserves, children get their picture of what relationships are from the home that they live in, right? And
Mm.
so all these people who want to just stay together for the kids, I meet these adults who are like, when they hear what I do, like, I wish my parents would have gotten divorced because their marriage was so fucked up. And now
Hmm.
I can't seem to have a healthy relationship. I'm like, well, what do you know? Right.
What do
So,
you
like,
know?
research also shows us that while there's this notion that divorce will mess up your kids, it is very often a relief for children when they find out their parents are splitting up, when there has been excessive conflict or toxicity. And don't forget that conflict is also it's also very obvious when there isn't fighting. There can just be tension and parents aren't
Hmm.
talking to each other. They're speaking, in one word sentences. So the idea that the divorce will mess up the kids is so antiquated and not true. It's really what will mess up the kids, though, is remaining in conflict thereafter.
Yeah. So when I love the idea too, and this is very important to me for children to be able to make their own relationships and keep their own relationships with their parents, as you were saying. So, what do you say to, because I hear this a lot from friends, everyone is like, when co parenting schedules get changed or when dad isn't showing up in the way that you expect him to, et cetera. And you see it. So, okay. So, for example, the woman that you were coaching, and she's like,
Hmm.
the guy is bailing on parenting time all the time, and my child is affected from it. How do you talk to your children about that and support them and how they're feeling? And talk to them about the actions that that co-parent is taking without like feeling like you're just bashing them. Like, how do you do
Hmm.
that in a constructive way
That's a
so
really
that,
great question. And that is something that people struggle with, right? Because it's
yeah.
like, we always hear don't talk bad about the other parent, but then at the
Hmm.
same time, we don't want to be lying to our kids. So,
Right, then
what
they invalidate their feelings and disconnect from their intuition.
exactly? And that's what we don't want, because that
Hmm.
that creates a lot of anxiety and distrust within a child. Like, they don't know what's real and what's not. Can they trust their own feelings? And
Hmm.
hello, like me, that's like all I've
Uh-huh,
worked through
samesies.
now, right?
Uh-huh.
So in this example, right, like, if a child comes to you and says, um why is daddy always talking badly about you?
Mm.
Well, okay. This is, and this happens a lot for a lot of people. Or why is the other mom or dad? I don't want to gender
Right,
stereotype, but
right, me either.
um, you know, at that point, you can say, "Oh, no, he's not. Don't worry. Your dad's great." No, we don't want to say that, because now it's like, well, didn't I hear what I heard? Right?
Yeah.
I witnessed physical violence one time in my home between my
Hmm.
father and my mother. And my
Hmm.
mom to this day will be like, "Oh, nah, you didn't see that." I'm like, had you just stopped and acknowledged that I did see it and given me the support, because sometimes
Yes.
it feels too hard if a parent acknowledge, like, if she wasn't able to handle that emotionally, of course she doesn't want to have to try and sit in my feeling. So anyway,
Yep.
point being is, why is daddy talking bad about you? The right thing to do there is not pretend it didn't happen and not say, well, because honey, what have I tried to tell you? Your dad sucks. Like, that's why.
Yeah.
Wow. So you heard daddy say something about me that made you feel uncomfortable. What was that? Or, you don't have to tell me if you don't want to, but it seems to me that you're carrying that, and that must feel really yucky for you. Yeah, I
Yeah.
didn't like that. He said that because I've never heard you talk bad about him. And okay, so this is where we teach critical thinking skills. Is there a reason why daddy could have said that? Like, I know you love mommy and you think mommy's great, but don't people upset each other sometimes? Remember that time your best friend forgot to bring back
Hmm.
your bracelet to school and you were so upset? Did that make her a bad friend? No, but there was a disagreement, right? So
Yeah.
maybe mommy did something to upset daddy. Well, he said that you said da da da, and then you talk about the problem, and then
Yeah.
you don't make it about the person. You make it about the situation, and so you're not sitting there saying dad's bad for saying this. You're teaching a lesson of, dad can have this opinion because of this one situation we were in. Doesn't have to be your opinion,
Hmm.
and mommy doesn't have to feel the same way about daddy, but we can hold space for the fact that you hearing that was yucky and you
Hmm.
don't want to hear that again. And that's
Yeah.
that. And if you're dealing with a situation where dad is inconsistent and not, or mom is inconsistent, not
Hmm.
showing up and making the child feel really neglected, you don't want to say, oh, but they love you, because that
Right.
isn't love, right? That
No.
doesn't feel like love. And maybe, yes, objectively, the parent loves the child, but they've
Right.
got their own things going on in which leads them to
Mm.
be inconsistent. So you want to say, yeah, it really feels like you're not getting the time and attention you want from your other parent. Is there any way that I can help you through that? I can't make them show up here, but I want you to remember that you are loved and you are special and you are important. So it's about validating their feelings
Yeah.
without throwing the other person under the bus, because lying to your kids doesn't help either.
No, it sure doesn't. Oh God, that is like, I feel like so many people literally just pressed rewind, back 10 seconds, and just played this over and over again because there are so many scenarios where that's the truth. And even in families that are still together, there are so many scenarios where, like, I don't know, tension comes up in the house, et cetera, et cetera. Like, don't lie to your kids about it. You don't need to drag them through it with you. But if they have the capacity and honestly the bravery to come and talk to you about it, like, hold space for it.
Yeah.
Ugh,
Yeah.
my daughter, just a big old work in progress around staying in my body and being connected to my own emotions. So she'll come up to me. I have two highly intuitive, sensitive kids, and they'll come up to me and be like, "Are you stressed?" And I'm like, "No." And then I'll come back 10 minutes later and be like, "Oh my god, yeah. I was like, I've got it. Don't get me
Yeah.
wrong, I've got it, but I wanted you to know that you were right because I don't want
Yeah.
to like invalidate her intuition." I feel
Hmm.
like it is my life's work as an adult to reconnect back to mine.
Absolutely. And I think we feel like we have to be like these perfect, happy
Mhm.
parents all the time.
Yes.
And that's not doing our kids any favors, because then that's teaching them that they have to be something that is so hard to achieve. Right. And so,
Yeah.
my daughter is also very tuned into my emotions. I mean,
Mhm.
since she was a baby, like
Right.
when her dad and I would interact, I would see her little eyeballs going back and forth. She really wanted to
Oh,
read our faces. And
yeah.
now when I pick her up from school, like she'll ask, like, how was your day? And I'm
Uh-huh.
like, I love that you asked, babe, but don't forget, even though there were really stressful parts of my day, it's my job to worry about your feelings, not your job to worry about mine. Because children of divorce, that's another thing that hurts them in the long term, is they will take on the responsibility of keeping their parents happy. If they know that there's conflict, they
Mhm.
are, children feel much safer when there's no conflict. So they're going to do everything in their power to make
Oh,
sure that they're not contributing to any stress. And that includes not opening up about how they feel. So they're going to
yeah.
swallow their feelings to not put any more pressure on you. And that's really unfair for a child to do when, like, our job is to take care of them. And so you
Yeah.
constantly want to remind children of divorce that even though life may feel stressful for you, it's never going to be stressful enough where their feelings won't matter. Because
Oh,
even
that's
if you
good.
feel like, I'll have clients say to me, like, oh, I'm worried about Susie because she's always emotional about the divorce, but Johnny, he's fine. He doesn't say anything. And I'm like,
Uh,
is he though? I'm like, and
right.
I want you to ask him this question tonight when you're putting him to bed. Ask little Johnny, hey, I haven't had time to like check in with you. How are you feeling about, being in mom's house and dad's house? And I promise you, Johnny's going to come up with a whole list of things that you didn't realize he was feeling, because someone in the family dynamic is swallowing their feelings in order to keep the peace.
Yes, 1,000% yes. I like, even when my kids are like, "Man, 4 kids looks really hard." And I'm like, "Well, it is, but it's also like my literal favorite thing in the world." So,
Hmm.
two things can be true, you know? It can be like it is literally logistically challenging to drive you guys around for 4 hours to all your various sports and like me eating snacks in the car and but I'm like, but I wouldn't change it. I wouldn't change it for the world. Ugh.
Yeah. And while you're on the topic of two things can be true, I think why parents tend to invalidate their kids' feelings so much when it comes to the divorce, it's because validating their feelings is also validating every parent's greatest fear, that their
Mm,
child is in fact struggling with a part of this. But two things can be true. Like, part of this divorce and co-parenting journey can feel hard for your child, and they can get through it without long-term effects that, we hear, like, the children will be messed up. If we help them through it, there's
yeah.
a much greater chance that they won't be messed up.
Oh, see, everyone, we got to be able to hold space for more than one belief at the same time. I
Yep.
absolutely love that.
I very
So,
much live in the gray. Like, everything is a
mhm.
both and to me.
Yeah, that is such a good reminder for a bajillion things. When fear comes up, when all the guilt comes up, there's a both and everywhere.
And
Uh,
and also, when you're adjusting to co-parenting and you're
mhm,
so angry, so many people will say, like, can you believe my ex is behaving like this? They're the one who did the
mhm.
bad thing. And I'm like, can this be like a both and? Like, they can be both the person who cheated and also are upset that the marriage ended. Like, Nobody
Mm.
wants this to happen. We do things without recognizing the consequences sometimes. So it's, I think when I help clients pull back and realize that their exes are just as entitled to their own emotions as they are,
Mm.
that does help diffuse some conflict for sure.
Yeah, definitely. And what a gift for kids to not have to feel responsible for diffusing whatever tension it is that's in both households for that.
Yeah. Yeah.
So we're living in two different houses. We're trying to sort of abide by the same sort of rules and energy and support, etc. How are we helping kids in a two-family home be the best versions of themselves?
By
What does that
allowing them
look
to
like?
be themselves. I think
Oh,
a reminder all the time that
yeah.
you don't have to be any which way in this house to be loved. And if you discover that there is a part of you that you get to be at daddy's house that you really enjoy, for my daughter, it's watching scary movies. She loves
Uh-huh. Yeah, same.
horror. I freaking hate it. But,
Mm-hmm.
my belief is, how the hell does daddy think it's okay to let you watch that? But I'm not going to put that out there. I'm going to say, God, you really love that stuff. Yes, of course you could be Meg for Halloween or whoever the
Yeah,
horror,
totally.
it's like
Right. Yes.
celebrating, like again, back to the Children's Bill of Rights, like children deserve the right to be a child despite
Yeah.
their parents' marital status. And so it's really, honing in on who your child is, not putting unfair expectations of them, not using statements like, well, in my house, this is how we do things because you're resentful of what's going
Yeah.
on in the other home. Just, letting them be fluid. When I do my trainings, because I train and certified divorce coaches, um, I use the infinity symbol
Mm-hmm.
in terms of mom's house and dad's house, right? Not a
Yeah.
Venn diagram, which
Yeah.
is overlapping and then the child is kind of stuck in the middle. I use an
Yeah.
infinity
I
symbol
like
and
that.
I put an image of a child and I move that child around the symbol as it
Mm.
relates to the relationship with both parents, because there should be fluidity there and it shouldn't feel like the child has to compartmentalize and be two totally different people because of their
Yeah.
parents' expectations.
Yeah. Gosh, because I can imagine homes feel innately different just based on like
They
the
do.
activity. Yeah.
Yeah.
So
The
why?
homes can feel different, but there
Yeah.
shouldn't be pressure on the child to have to be different.
Ugh. Snap, 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 snap. Ugh, literally obsessed. Okay, I want to be mindful of time because I know I only have you for a couple of more minutes, but I think, there's so many important things that we've talked about in terms of like really what is resilience and how does that look like in any home and how do you maintain what that looks like in a two-family home and sort of what are the pitfalls where parents can kind of add extra layers that get in the way of kids just being kids. What I really love about being a parent, divorced or not, is letting my kids be whatever it is that they want to be. Like, and I
Hmm.
feel like that's very different for how any of us were raised. We had expectations. We're all trying to fulfill something that, we think our parents wanted us to do. And I think the greatest gift that we can give to our kids is to just let them discover who they are.
Hmm.
I have a 13-year-old who's a boy, and my daughter is 11, and she's kind of turning into a teenager while he's turning into a teenager. I was like, oh, excuse me, what? But it's like this phase I'm finding so interesting because as a teenager, they're almost like trying on different versions of themselves, as they're
For
trying to
sure.
figure out. And I'm like, as their person, I'm like, oh, that one doesn't fit. But I'd keep it to myself. It's their journey to figure it out that I
Right.
was like, I'm really waiting till we're over this phase, but I'm going to hang in there and love you through it because I realize
Hmm.
this is part of your process. I'm not going to tell you how to
Hmm.
live your life. I'm just going to,
Hmm.
be in the background as that stable background and I don't know, watch them bump. So I think these notions of letting kids just be kids and figure it
Yeah.
out and be that safe support person. And I love the notion of being able, you need to be emotionally healthy enough, which is hard and a forever moving scale for all of us to hold space both for their emotions because you can also hold space for your emotions.
Absolutely. And, if it ever feels like your emotions are too big
Mm.
in any particular situation to care for the needs of your child, like it doesn't make you a bad mother, but you need to have the awareness to say, I need to step away from this right now. I need to manage myself before
Yeah.
I can help the child through this. Obviously, you don't want to tell the child that, but when it comes back to letting kids be who they are, I see a lot in divorced families where one parent really gets it. Like,
Mm-hmm.
I'm going to let my child be who they are. I'm going to support their relationship with their other parent. And then
Mm-hmm.
for whatever reason, the other parent is the exact opposite. It's
Mm-hmm.
important to remember that, like, you are only responsible for how you make your child feel. No amount of trying to change the other parent is going to be effective, or is, you're not going to get an award for it at the end of the day, because that's going to be their cross to bear with their children later on. But I always tell both parents, like, the world is a really cruel, judgmental place. Like, if your children can't feel safe at home with you, I mean,
Mm-hmm.
they're never going to feel safe anywhere. So you owe it to them to, like, be a judgment-free zone and love them as they are.
God, because as an adult, for if you grew up in a house where you didn't feel safe for any reason, that notion of not feeling safe lives with you forever. And it is
Forever.
forever. And so please give your gift, the gift of safety to your children,
Yeah. And it doesn't
emotional
go away.
safety. No,
Yeah.
no. Oh my goodness. Okay. I wanted to ask this one question. This is for all the women out there who have that feeling of, I'm unhappy. I want to leave. But one, how do I know when it's time to leave? And how can you make me feel safe and that my kids are going to be okay? When women come to you in that position, what do you say?
I have a very strict rule in my business, in my coaching business, and with my coaches who I train, that it is never our job to
Mm-hmm.
decide when someone should leave a marriage or stay in it. But I
Mm-hmm.
will ask certain questions that will very quickly help people come to their own decision. And those questions are: do you feel you've tried everything in your power to make this work? Because you want to be able to lay your head down at night and know that you left no stone unturned in trying to salvage this marriage. Because if a marriage can be saved, save it.
Mm-hmm.
Like,
Yeah.
if the other person is willing to work for it, then try. If at
Yeah.
that point it doesn't work, then go. But you
Yeah.
want to say you did that. The other question I ask is, if your marriage stayed the way it is right now for the rest of your life, is this the type of marriage you'd want any of your children to have?
Mm-hmm.
And that's very often, the eye-opening thing. And I'm very clear. I say, there's nothing easy about getting divorced or co-parenting. It's also hard. Just like being in a bad marriage is hard. Like, every part of our life is going to come with challenges, and it's how you handle those challenges that matter. It's not like there's one easy answer. There's not, but it's all doable. It's all figure outable, and
Yep.
you have to be willing to do the work.
Yeah. And what a gift to be able to create the environment that is a healthy environment and to model to your kids how to do the work
Mm-hmm.
if the circumstances,
Mm-hmm.
bring you to that point. I love that.
Yes.
Okay. I think, there's so many women who think about that very quietly. And I just want women to not feel so alone in that thought process and to know that so many people are asking themselves the same question. You are not alone.
And that it is very okay. There's the saying for a reason that a man marries a woman hoping she won't change, and a woman marries a man hoping he will. And when you get
Ooh.
married young, and you get married
Mm-hmm.
because this looks so good on paper, they come from a good home, they have a good job, da, 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 and then you realize this is the total opposite of the life I want, or I have now evolved way past that person. That's okay too. Like,
Yeah.
there's power in stepping into your power and doing what you need to do in order to make, like, your short little time on this universe count for something.
Yes. 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 Like you said, life is short, make it count. Oh, I love
Mm-hmm.
that. Is there anything better than when someone asks you where you got something and you're like, Amazon, can you believe it? It's like when someone says, oh, I love your dress, and you get to be like, it has pockets. I love Amazon because I can experiment with trends and activewear and fashion, beauty, and anything else I really want without having to break the bank. If you're like me and you get a little bit sad, okay, maybe more than a little bit sad, when there's no package at the door, then you are my people. Also, I think we might need help. But until then, visit amazon.com/shop/write your own story co, or click the link in the show notes to shop all my faves in fashion, beauty, home decor, organization, and more. These are treasures you're not going to want to miss. Okay, I like to wrap up every episode really talking about all different types of conversation that we think women should have. And you and I had agreed. So you are clearly a very driven, ambitious, very busy. I've just signed you up for book 2, 3, and 4, amongst all of your coaching and training and all the things. How do you take care of yourself as a like? And I mean, like really, truly, what is life like? What does it feel like? And how are you taking care of yourself?
So for me, it's the most cliche, but the most powerful form of honoring like the brain body connection. I need to exercise.
Yeah.
Sometimes it looks like heavy, intense weightlifting sessions with my trainer in the gym. Other times it's a 20-minute walk with my dog or to pick up Bella from school because I need the type of work that I do. Like you hold a lot for people
Oh,
and
yeah.
holding that in your body can sometimes feel it's stressful, right? And
Yeah,
not because you
totally.
don't love what you do, but you're carrying people's stress for them. So moving my body is really important. I know like I'll get to a point in my day where if I don't get out and take a walk, like I'm not going to be pleasant to be around. So I'm actually working on putting together a whole fitness component to the moving on method
Ooh.
because simple, easy, like connections that we make to our body on the day to day really help take your brain from like a level 10 to a 2 where it deserves to be. All that cortisol and excess stress is really damaging long term and will affect your children, you know? So that's really important to me. The other thing I've really learned to do is I went from people pleasing and saying yes to every invitation and every ask of me to mostly no. Like, I don't want to
Mhm.
say I'm a hermit, but I have a very small, tight knit circle of friends that mean the world to me, who I will drop
Mhm.
anything for. But outside of that, like my family and what goes on under my roof is my priority. I've said no
Yeah.
to so many incredible opportunities. You'd be like, how could you say no to that? But I know for me, taking care of myself means not putting extra pressure on myself. So it doesn't matter what celebrity has invited me to do what or what party I'm invited to that how could you miss that? Like if it causes me stress and
Yeah.
it involves me leaving my family, my daughter and my stepdaughter, who I already don't get enough time with, like I'm going to say no to it. So being discerning is the greatest gift I've given myself.
Being discerning. And I love that you have certain parameters that you kind of like check that against. Does this bring stress? Does this take me out of my home? Because you're so
Very,
clear.
very strict and strong boundaries. Like
Yeah.
even with family, like, no,
Yeah.
you cannot come over today and visit because
Yeah.
this is my time and this
Yes.
is my daughter's got homework and it's just not going to work today. Sorry. Like if it causes
Yes.
more stress, it's a no. No way.
I I also, it's like a joke, but I also absolutely mean it. I'm like, I'm in my rest era. I am living my
Yeah,
best restful life. I love
absolutely.
staying in, which I'm so extroverted, but I'm like, nope, watch me round off back handspring. Just kidding. I'm crawling to the couch.
Yeah, I'm very introverted and I felt really
Hmm.
ashamed of that for a long time. So I would
Oh,
force myself to socialize.
that must
And
be
now I'm just,
exhausting.
it is, it is. It
Yeah.
never feels
Yeah.
good to like force yourself into a situation just to avoid being alone. And now I'd much rather be alone.
Well, and I love that that's staying so authentic to who you are. You're like, no, I just don't genuinely, you're like, I love my people, but I don't enjoy putting myself out in those types of situations. I
Yeah.
also really love what you said about fitness because I am so hopeful that women are going to lean into fitness and exercise from a somatic, honoring your body, just being like, this type sounds fun today. That sounds fun to walk my dog today, or it sounds fun to go lift with a trainer today. But like, it less about how you look and more just about how you feel and
Oh,
honoring
yeah.
what your body needs.
Yeah. It's not about, for me, like I always say, it's not about a revenge body. It's a revenge mindset. It's like,
Yeah.
I'm taking care of me because it feels good and
Yes.
everything else is over there now. Thank you.
Yeah. And I love the way that you put it. So many of us are empaths that like when you move your body, it moves that energy out.
It fully
That
does.
that makes me want to just go
I
right on
have to
down to the
take a
gym.
walk sometimes before I
Yeah.
make, if it's a business decision or,
Yeah.
my husband and I are trying to figure out how to navigate a difficult parenting situation. Like, let
Sure.
me take a walk
Yeah.
and then talk to me because anything I say or do right now, like, is not going to be, it's going to be
Yeah.
too emotional.
Oh God, that's so good. Let me walk about it. Oh, I love that so much.
Hmm.
Okay. I know we're at the top of our time. I could ask you 2 trillion more questions. So thank you so much for your time and for sharing your wisdom and for your passion. And again, just to reiterate how many children you're helping and how many women and how many families. And so I just please keep, as long as it continues to fill your cup, keep doing the good work because it really, truly is making such an impact.
Thank you. I appreciate that. And thank you for having me. This was a great conversation.
Absolutely. Okay. So if we can get everyone to get involved, I know you have these, amazing courses. Tell us, what is the priority? What serves the most? How can we find you and where should we look?
I mean, my website is michelledempsey.com. On there, you can find links to all of my courses. I have very specific,
Hmm.
research backed, pre recorded courses that you can watch, whether it's questions about how to talk to your kids about divorce, what steps to take when you're considering divorce, how to raise resilient children in the face of divorce. I have a course for everything. I
Hmm.
do one on one coaching, and I have my divorce coach training certification program, the Moving On Method, which you can apply for. We have a new training in January, and my book, Moms Moving On, Real Life Advice on Conquering Divorce, Co-Parenting Through Conflict and Becoming Your Best Self, has been, thank God, so successful since I released it in 2022. It's available anywhere you buy books, Barnes and Noble, Target, Amazon.
Yep.
So any of those things. And, if you have more questions, listen to the podcast. The Moving On Method is released a new episode every week.
That's amazing. And absolutely follow on social as well. Your sound bites are so honest and real. Plus, you always share like the cutest stuff, and you're just a really fun, inspiring follow.
Thank you.
Michelle, thank you, thank you, thank you. Everyone, please share this episode. There are so many people, especially if you're a person that isn't in divorce and you don't know what to say, you can share this episode and say, I see you. And
Yeah.
that is just such a gift to your person in your life who's going through divorce or, whatever it may be. But that level of empathy and care would just be amazing. So I really encourage everyone to share and just let people know that they are seen. Okay. You guys, Michelle, thank you again. And thanks everyone
Thank
for
you.
listening. And we will catch you next time. Well, that's the end of this episode, but promise me, you won't stop here with whatever it is you're feeling or dreaming about. I hope you leave today feeling empowered to live life just as you see fit. If this podcast was helpful to you, it would mean the world to me if you could leave a review on whatever platform you're listening on. I genuinely just want to help women live the life they dream about. So if this type of content tracks with you, subscribe to this podcast or visit our website, writeyourownsstory.co, to download digital courses or to grab a journal and a mug to just dream in and dream with. It's your life, lady. Do you. And just remember, I'm rooting for you, and you've totally got this.